it off, Patrick. I used to have a story written about me, and without fail, somebody would call after the story was written but not published, and they were called fact checkers. Hello, sir. We're calling about a story that we wrote about you. Is it true that you own this? And is it true that you did this? And that you spent X dollars? Could we check that number? Blah, blah, blah. And it would go on for a while to a point where you'd get somebody else to just do it. But they, without fail, I'd have, if there were any details in a story, not always, but if there were any details, always, and they would call fact checkers. Hello, sir. My name's Jim Smith. I'm a fact checker for the New York Times. And they check the facts of a story. And I think they at least were trying to be real. I haven't had a fact checker call me in 30 years. They don't call anymore.
Do you think that's because of the Fairness Doctrine Act of 1987? Because prior to that, media platforms had to actually give both sides of the story. And then once that was dropped, they lost the accountability. They could say whatever they want to say. And it was kind of free-for-all. Let me go after them. But for you, when you became a president, if someone's running for office, you have to sit there and think about issues. Here's what I'm running on. Wall, border, economy, XYZ. Great. Obama, I'm going to go after healthcare. Yeah. Jimmy Carter, I'm going to go human rights. You pick and choose what you're running for. But there's also an element of who are going to be my allies, who are going to be my enemies. Did you sit there and say, the enemy of the people is media, I'm going to go after them? Or did you say, no, this happened accidentally? Was this intentional or was it accidental?
I think it's just long-term happened. It morphed into it. I don't think they said.
I'm talking specifically for you, though.
Yeah. For me, look, I'm the worst case because there's nobody been abused like I have. And I don't think, although I guess probably some, but for a shorter period of time. There's nobody for over such a long...
Who would you put? You haven't thought about it. Who do you think?
I'd have to think short-term people have been abused. Yeah, over one deal and they're gone or something.
I got it.
But I've been doing this for a long time. Right. And I abuse them also. So, I do that.
But did you target them and say, I'm going to go attack media and I'm going to go after them? Is that part of strategy that you had? Or no, that was just,
no.
If you come after me, I'm going to come after you?
I think it's a natural instinct with me, like it would be for you and other people that know how to win a little bit.
Sure.
No, but I really saw it in politics. I would tell them something and they would write the opposite. Mm-hmm. I said, what's that all about? I called up, the Washington Post was treating me very bad. New York Times is probably the worst, but the two of them are really bad. And I know how to deal with the press. I'm a professional, I'm a smart guy, and I know. So I said, watch, I'm going to call the press in, Washington Post, during my first or second year. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm going to call the Washington Post. I'm not going to joke. I'm not going to be cute. I'm not going to be a wise guy. I'm going to just call them in. And I want to talk, and I'm going to explain what a great job I've done on different things, like the economy. I had a great economy, all that. And I called them in. I was very nice. I didn't say, hey, how's it going? Everything was really professional. Mm-hmm. The numbers were fantastic. Everything was perfect. And I treated them with great respect, shook their hand, and it was over. And the next day they wrote a horrible story. It was... And I said, there's no way around it. And usually it's the liberal side, and I don't understand it really. Why wouldn't they want to have a strong border? I don't understand them because, usually like in business, you'll understand why somebody wants something. Mm-hmm. Why wouldn't they want to have a strong border? Why do they want to have men playing in women's sports? I watched the Olympics and two people transitioned into womanhood. Mm-hmm. Two people. They went from man to woman, and they were into boxing. And they beat the hell out of everyone. They won the gold medal. Weightlifting, records that held for 18 years, a quarter of an ounce on each side. You've seen me do it probably because it's so cool. I mean, weightlifting is so easy to, it's so descriptive, right? How can you be better than that? Like golf is a little bit harder because you have to sink putts. That's different. Women can putt, but they can't lift, 450 pounds over their head. And the weightlifting record that stood for 18, 19 years gets broken by 100 pounds. They put like a little, they take this They'd take this top of this pen. See that pen? That thing weighs like an eighth of an ounce. And they'd put one over here and one over. They couldn't do it for 18 years. So the guy comes along. It's crazy.
I mean, the border could make sense, though. If you were to say, like, why would they want the border to be
why
open?
Do they want an open
argument
border?
To be made there.
Well, why do they want an open border with no check-in? In other words, there's nobody vetted, nobody checked. And as you heard 2 weeks ago, the Border Patrol put out the numbers. They weren't supposed to, but they did because they had to. Because they had to inherently, they endorsed me.
I saw that.
Powerful. They endorsed me. 100% unanimous, like a massive, they said he's the greatest in the history of, I had the best border in the history of the country. I had the best economy in the history of the country. But you take a look at some of these stats. So yesterday, a young woman's playing volleyball. You saw that shot? And he got hit by a hard shot by a man who transitioned.
There's been many of those. If there was a new one yesterday.
She got hit in the head. She didn't know where she was.
Right.
She said, I've never seen a ball travel at that speed before. But here's why do they want that? I don't understand that. Usually you understand, like somebody wants something. Mm-hmm. You try and figure it out. And you could go through a lot of things. Why do they want transgender? Why do they want to take somebody's child, a boy, and make the boy into a girl and not tell the parents? I mean, they do this. And at first I said, no, but that's just an exaggeration. No, it's not. It's really not.
State of California.
Why do they want to? Yeah. Well, look at California. Gavin Newsom, who's one of the worst governors, but he's got a good line of stuff, and he'll tell everyone how well he's done. But it's the first time they've ever lost more people than they gained. They have such an advantage. The beautiful ocean, the beautiful weather, everything is beautiful. And they run it so badly with all of the problems. They run it so. He's a crummy governor, but why is it so? Yesterday, and who would sign the bill to even present it to him? He signed a bill that you're not even allowed to ask for voter ID. In other words, it's not like you can't have voter ID. That's terrible, because everybody should have voter ID. You have ID for everything. The Democrats had big ID. When they had their convention, a friend of mine couldn't get in. He said he doesn't have the proper credentials. They want voter ID. Mm-hmm. They had a strong ID. They had an ID that you had to wear, like a prisoner wears, with a number. Mm-hmm. It was like this big card with a picture and everything over their tie. So they have it for the Democrat National Convention, right? But they don't want to have it for the vote. But Gavin Newsom signed a thing that was incredible. He signed a bill that if you ask somebody for identification having to do with voting, I think you've committed a crime, okay? Now, there's only one reason that happens,